All right, 6 o'clock, so let's get started. Two or three things for those of you who are new. We do this, we're gonna do this monthly for the rest of the year. And what's the date for April?
April, we're doing the 22nd.
22nd of April, 6 o'clock. Just write it down, so you've got a note of it. And I'm committed by the end of the year for each of you that come once a month from here out to make you more knowledgeable than 90% of all the commercial brokers in the world. So we'll teach you a lot. To give you a little bit of background, I retired into the brokerage business at age 50. And I've closed 12,000 real estate transactions since then, personally, one at a time. And I've owned as many as 13,000 apartments at one time. And in the early 2004 or 5, 1031 tax exchanged them into 18 million square feet of commercial space in 7 states. So 18 million, if you divide that by 43,750, I think it's about 500 acres of buildings. So I've got a lot of background. Lillian is my wife, and we own this company together, built this building 6 years ago. You probably remember, Bill, when we built it and opened it, COVID hit the next day. And our friend Charlie Baker made real estate an essential service as the governor. So we made all of our sales team come in every day. We have a small sales team. Right now, 10 existing agents and 8 more new agents that have just joined the firm since January. And we'll do about $500 million of brokerage this year out of this little office. So last year, for the last 5 years, we've been the #1 real estate team in all of New England. So Lillian's been at the business 40 years, and we closed almost 500 transactions last year out of this office in 104 cities and towns from Rhode Island to New Hampshire. So that's the pedigree. So what I like to do always is to give you some things to noodle on and think about. So if you want to take notes, it's probably not a bad idea. Homeowners make 85% more annual income than renters. Pretty interesting statistic. 10% of buyers are LGBTQ. 93% of sellers use agents. 86% of all buyers find the process stressful. 34% communicate of buyers and sellers that work with agents communicate by text. 39% communicate by phone, and 16% communicate by message app. That's changed a lot, in case some of you don't know. Sitting here. 78% of all sellers make a decision to sell because of a life event. Divorce, death, kids graduating from school, going away to college, those are life events. 78% of all people that select a real estate agent select them for 3 reasons. They're trustworthy, they're responsive, and they're knowledgeable. I always say we spend time solving problems. Solving problems isn't anything for those 3. So 78% of the people don't agree with that. But as a practicing real estate broker and agent, I spend all my time solving problems for people buying and selling houses. So on the national scene and the international scene, how many of you know what AGI stands for? You do, Alan, but you're cheating, okay?
An annual gross income?
Nope. So you don't know either. I've interviewed, as of this afternoon, 204 people. Not one of the 204 people knew what AGI stands for. So anybody want to think and try and figure it out? It's the single most important thing that's going to happen in the rest of your life.
Something aging.
Nope. So write down these 3 words. Artificial general intelligence. Artificial general intelligence is coming about as the result of all of the data processing systems and facilities that are being built around the United States right now. One company announced they'd reached artificial general intelligence on Tuesday, okay? And another has been collecting data since its inception, and they believe that they'll reach artificial general intelligence by May or June. Hey, Mike, how are you?
Shalom.
Pull a chair up.
Thank you.
What are the 2 companies?
He didn't tell us yet.
I didn't tell you. The second company is Tesla, and the combination of Musk's companies. And the significance of that is artificial general intelligence is 100 times more productive and efficient than ChatGPT. 100 times. There'll be millions of jobs taken and gone. And the projected time frame is by the end of 2026. In case you hadn't checked, that's 9 months away.
Did you read Centrini's 2028 report?
No, I didn't read it yet.
Oh my God. She's jumping off the roof.
No, but you need to understand what's going on around you.
The stock market
We-
crashed the next day after he released it in February.
Well, we lost 88,000 jobs in the US in February, and that's just the beginning. The second unintended consequence is that Trump started rehiring at the federal government level because he knows what's coming. Okay? And the reality is that I'll give you a podcast to watch. It's a 2-hour-long podcast, and it's a promotion by one of the leading smart investment analysts that I followed for 20 years. His boss is a guy by the name of Porter Stansberry, and his name is Brown, and the name of the podcast is America-Unleashed.com. If you want to blow your mind, watch it. If you don't want to blow your mind, just then go on unannounced and unworried, don't watch it, okay? But I suggest you all watch it because it's a predictor of what's going to happen.
So that was America Unleashed.
America-Unleashed, okay, .com. So I find it amazing that now 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 214 people I've asked the question of didn't know AGI, what it meant. And it's here. So
No, what AI means. What does the general mean?
that means it's the combination of all of these data centers' impact and ability. Hey, get them a chair, Nick, and scooch them up around here.
We got some room up here if you want to.
Slide up so you can join the crew.
How are you doing?
Good, how are you?
Doing all right, not too bad.
Good.
Appreciate you.
Sorry to interrupt.
So I had a really interesting conversation today with a close friend of mine who's the largest Persian and Oriental rug dealer in America. He's headquartered in Nashville, Tennessee. And you say, what could be interesting about that? Well, his manufacturing plant for silk carpets in Qum, Iran, was just bombed and destroyed. And he said, Bob, I think it's about a $5 million loss. And he said, I couldn't be effing happier because we've lived under a dictator for 47 years. And he said he killed 30,000 of my friends and residents in the streets of Tehran in the last 2 months. And he said, if it only cost me $5 million to get rid of him, I'm happy. And I said, who do you think Trump is talking to and with his negotiators in Iran? And he said, well, I'll tell you who he isn't talking to. The 80 most important government leaders in Tehran are all dead. And so he said, I think he's talking to 2 generals in the IRG, the Iranian National Guard, because he said there's only 2 left living. So kind of interesting what's going on around us. And if you go to the gas pump, you understand what's happening to gas prices. And if we can't impact and clear the canal, the Suez Canal, they're going to continue to be high. So, but in the end, that may be a small price to pay. I don't know whether you know or not, but the Iranians had committed in their nuclear truce that was signed by Obama that they had no missiles or bombs that could travel farther than 500 miles. And that was a commitment they made in the negotiations. They just unleashed 2 on a base of ours in the Pacific that traveled 2,800 miles. And that means that they could have reached with a nuclear bomb every city in Europe. So it's pretty frightening when you think about it and where we are.
The gentleman with the rug factory,
Yeah,
did the value of his rugs go up?
well, he said
Since he
obviously
can't make
he'd
more.
made a proposal to me to invest in a couple of carpets he had at an art show in Palm Beach that I was at. And I didn't. He said, man, you should have made that investment, because he said the silk Qum rugs are worth twice as much today as they were a month ago. Because he said, I don't think, Bob, we'll ever make any more. If we do, it'll take us 5 to 7 years to rebuild the plant and rehire the people to make them and have the facilities to do it and have the silk. He said, you know, we lost all the silk, we lost all the rugs that were there, we lost all the machinery, and we lost the buildings, and it was an accident. They didn't even intend to bomb us. But he said they've bombed now 13,000 locations. I heard 9. He said 13,000 locations in Iran since the war started 4 weeks ago. So think about dropping all those bombs around us. A lot better they'd be over there, I think. So a new IPO is going to be done in the next 60 days. And when Elon Musk talked to NASA the first time, he asked them how long it would take him to create a spaceship, and they said 25 years. He did it in 3. And today, NASA just fired Boeing and hired SpaceX, Musk Company. And Musk Company is going to go public. Projections are in May, and the initial public offering is $1.5 trillion. So gives you
What's the ticket number?
SpaceX.
What's the ticket number?
Too late.
So
Too late.
the other thing that just happened, which is notable in terms of current events, is Facebook and Instagram were just found guilty by a Los Angeles jury in a jury trial of being addictive to children and designing their systems to be addictive. There's 19,000 suits in the legal process right now on that same subject. So you're going to be reading a lot about the addiction caused by Meta and Google and the other companies. So just some thoughts for you to think about.
The testimony in that case that was won by the plaintiff, there was only one plaintiff that testified.
Only one plaintiff.
Right, so if you don't think that's gonna be overturned, but if there's 19,000.
There's 19,000 suits in the pipeline, Mike. So this is only the beginning. It'll go on for years. The National Association of Realtors just went through a class action suit a year ago, and it changed the form we provide so that before we can show a house, to be legal, we need to have you sign a form saying that you are going to work with us. And the attorneys in that suit made $597 million. So suits aren't filed for the benefit of the real estate world. They're filed for the benefit of the attorneys who file them. So anyway, so enough on current events and comments. So we're going to talk a little bit about what's happening with AI. And for those of you who don't know, I wrote a book a few years ago called Clarity. And it sold, I don't know, maybe 60,000 copies now. And I just did something which will show you what can happen. And you'll find this interesting, Jens. I just organized it so that you can go on a website called Clarity by Bohlen, BOHLEN.com. And you can ask any business question or real estate question. That site is a compilation of the book and all the speeches I've given over the years and all the papers I've written, and it'll answer any question about business or real estate you want to ask it. So, have at it. Hey, how are you?
Sorry.
So it'll answer, pull up another chair over here, go get a Nick. So it'll answer any business question or real estate question you can think of that I know of that I'm smart enough to have answered at some time. So it's kind of interesting. That's just the beginning of what's going to be going on with general AI. I mean, there's no limit. So, Nick, you want to talk a little bit about AI?
Absolutely. Yeah, so I know we talked about what's coming in the future, but right now there's still a lot of tools that we can use as we're just looking to invest. So in this room, who's used AI in any capacity to look at real estate on their investing? See a lot of hands go up, which isn't surprising because tools like ChatGPT, Claude, Grok, all of these are very usable, and if you know the right way to do it, it can still be a great resource. So what we're referring to there, it's called an LLM, which is a large language model. So essentially what you need to remember there is although these are great tools with a lot of information, they're essentially just based off information that they can gather online and then the prompts that are given up front. So let's say you just go to Zillow and you upload a link to a property and say, okay, analyze this for me and tell me what you think. You're really not giving it much to work with. And one thing to remember is if you give it garbage, it's going to give you garbage back. So it's important to really be specific, give it clear guardrails, and that's what you really want to do. So if you flip to this last page, which is the Real Estate AI GPT, this is something that everyone can look into as soon as now. That's going to start to give you a better feel of, analyzing these properties. So GPT is essentially a preset, if you want to think of it simply, where you can give it the guardrails ahead of time, and then anything you upload to it, it's going to automatically just run you through everything there. So everyone can look through this in their own time, but just a high level overview, just giving it like the purchase price of the property, location, the expected rent. And then if you set it up correctly, you can actually have it deny you if you don't have enough information. So let's say you didn't give it good data on the expenses, or even if you give your taxes and it doesn't look right, it can spit it back to you and say, hey, something doesn't look right here. Do you want to look back into it, or do you want me to give you a better number, or do you want to proceed as needed? So it gives you more upfront, which is great. And as you go through, you can see that this can calculate your gross rent, it can do your NOI, your cap rate, your mortgage, and then cash flow, just like that immediately. But like I said, garbage in, garbage out, so it's really important that you're putting good information in here, because if not, you're gonna get information that's unusable. So the better guardrails you have, the better, and this GPT is just a good way to look at it up front. One thing that I like to do on mine is after it runs all the data, I'll put a stop on it that says recheck everything a different way. So that way, if there's some sort of problem, it's forced to go all the way back to step one, rerun it in a slightly different way, and then make sure that the numbers still line up. And is it still perfect there? No, there can still be problems, there can still be use cases where it's not as good, but you're at least getting closer to a 0% chance of fail there. And as we get into the AGI, it's gonna be better, it's gonna be faster, more efficient. But for now, this is still saving hours. And when I'm working with clients, because I'm doing real estate as a realtor now, instead of having to sit there for a long time doing everything up front, I use this on a daily basis, but I still will verify the numbers in person. But the other thing there, I said garbage in, garbage out. If you don't know what you're doing with this, you're not going to know how to analyze it. So this is really only useful if you know how to run the numbers on your own. But once you know that, you'll be able to catch any mistake, make sure it makes sense, and then the GPT will just work better.
Just one thing to add to what Nick is saying
Yeah.
right now is that I've had a little bit of experience where even when you do put in the right numbers, sometimes it comes back with things that don't make sense.
Right.
So you just need to go in and say, are you sure? And check another source and do it. Sometimes I have two different
Responses.
Yeah.
Well,
Exactly.
Well, I'll share an interesting story with you. I just came back from a group of people that I've coached for 25 years in the real estate business in San Francisco. And as a group, we've been to 105 wineries together over 27 years. So we pretty well covered Napa and Sonoma. But we asked Perplexity and ChatGPT and another AI system to give us the 4 best wineries that served a majority of red wines in Napa that would handle 20 or more people for a tasting. And the 3 systems came back with each 4 different wineries. So 12 wineries we had to pick from. Out of what we were looking for was 4. So it isn't perfect yet, but it's headed there. And AG will get us there, for sure.
I have my doubts about that though.
Well,
It's like the more I use AI, the more I realize it only gives garbage in, garbage out. 101 in IT,
But let me give you an example of something, and that is this. The more input you put in at the top, the better results you'll get at the bottom. So I'm working on leasing a space in a center we own in North Andover. And so I said to ChatGPT, I need a tenant for 1,670 square feet that can afford $5,600 a month in rent, that's doing at least $1.3 million in annual sales, that needs a space with frontage that has exposure, that currently has a lease that's about to expire, and is interested in relocating their facility in North Andover. And I got 9 responses. Let me tell you what, if I hadn't had AI, I'd have been running for 9 months to get a response each month, trying to find out the issue. So the time-saving function is just mind-boggling.
I agree with that, but I also agree, like, we're training AI.
Yeah.
The more intelligence we put in it, we're training it, and it's getting smarter and
No,
smarter.
absolutely.
But it's also getting dumber and dumber, because some people are putting the wrong information in.
Well, AGI is gonna change all that. So it's 100 times more predictable and 100 times more efficient than ChatGPT. And it's
What
here.
is the difference?
The difference is that it collects the stats. Let me give you an example. And you may not think about this, but currently, Musk has 6 companies that's feeding in information. And do you know that he gets the information on every mile driven, on all 4 tires, on Tesla every day, and that's 11 million miles? So do you think the data from 11 million miles of tires is better than guessing? It's not even close. And he's got X and SpaceX, and it's amazing what's going to happen when all of that data is assembled in one place and can be distilled, because you can't even distill it right now. So it gives you something to think about. Alan.
What's interesting is the line between objective information and subjective. First of all, with your winery example, coming back with 12 and you just wanted 4, you could argue that that's somewhat subjective.
Well, but I had 3 different AI systems, and each came back with 4, and none of the 4 were the same. They were
Right.
all different. It was amazing.
That's it. But with your real life example over in North Andover, say the one piece of data that wouldn't be necessarily or readily public would be those companies that have leases. that
Lease
were expired.
terminations.
What do they do when they don't have direct access to that somewhat?
CoStar now records all of them.
Oh, interesting.
Costa?
CoStar. Okay? And CoStar owns Homes.com. Okay? And CoStar is owned by 3 Saudi Arabians, which people don't have a clue about.
What's the subscription to CoStar cost?
Oh, up to 50,000.
A year?
Yeah. But you got all the data.
If you're in that business, it's essential.
So let's hand these out, Nick. So I'm going to hand out an example to work from that we're going to go through and analyze.
To Nick's point, you've got to know what the answer, the parameters of the answer are. Like I use debt service ratio when I'm looking at rental properties. If all of a sudden something's way out of whack, I can spot that right away.
Right. That's the thing why it's useful, but you should always know how to run the numbers on your own first, and then you can just cut it right off there and be like, hey, that doesn't look right.
Mhm.
So if you take the white sheet out of that package, those are the numbers related to this property. Gross rent that was collected last year is $149,808. I always use a 5% vacancy factor because no rental facility is full every day forever. And 5% vacancy means that each unit in a building is vacant 1 month out of 20. Okay, that's 5%. All right? The actual expenses were real estate taxes, $99.51, property insurance, $52.02, electric, $6.24, water and sewer, $38.14, and landscaping and snow removal, $1,430. So the net operating income is $121,296. Now, that's a 6.7 cap rate. When the property was listed, that was probably 3/4 of a point less than the cap rate needed to be to cash flow. So the rule I want you all to learn is that whatever the interest rate is at your local bank, if you're gonna buy a property, you need the cap rate to be at least 1% more than the interest rate at the bank, okay? Crucial number and factor to remember, save you hours of time. The other thing that for those of you who weren't here last time, I want you to remember is there are 4 types of total return in a real estate investment. The first is cash on cash. The second is principal pay down, the amount of mortgage debt you pay down each year. The third is appreciation. And for the last 37 years in Massachusetts, residential properties have appreciated 7% a year for 37 years. So if you buy a house in Massachusetts, and I read the first number to you, 85 owners make 85% more money than renters. And if you buy a house in Massachusetts, you're going to get 7% appreciation unless you drastically overpay for it. So 7% appreciation, if you put 20% down, means that you earn 35% on your equity every year from appreciation alone. 5 times the 20% down. Another quick rule of thumb. But I want you all to remember, cash on cash, appreciation, principal pay down, and tax gain or loss. Those are the 4. And you're able to deduct your expenses in a rental property, your depreciation in a rental property, and traditionally, the cash on cash return on a properly purchased property should be tax-free. So that makes it worth 40% more if you're in the upper brackets. Okay?
Can you repeat that again?
Yes. If you buy a proper real estate investment property, and we'll use this as an example in a minute, okay? You're able to deduct the depreciation, all the taxes, your insurance, all of your other operating expenses against your ordinary income. And if, and we'll dial this property in to be exact, but at a 6.7 cap, it breaks even. And that's because when we did the listing, we listed it, and interest rates before the Iran war a month ago were 5.75. So at a 6.7 interest rate, a cap rate, it would cash flow. Now, the same bank loan will cost you 6.5% because of the Iran issue we're going through. And 6.5% means that you have to have a 7.5 cap rate at a minimum to buy the property, or you can't afford to buy it unless you want to just take your money in and out and not get any cash flow. All right, follow? At a 7.5 cap, this property will throw off on, at less than $1,000,008, at $1,006,000 we'll find is the solution to the problem when we get there. But at $1,006,000, if you put 25% down, that's $400,000. At a 7.5 cap, this property will return $30,000 a year in free cash flow after all expenses and after the mortgage pay down, okay? And that will give you a 7.5% return cash on your $400,000. Follow? Any questions? I have questions.
Any heat or cooling in these expenses?
Heat and cooling is at the expense of the tenant. All tenants pay for their electricity, their heat, and their cooling. And interestingly enough, they don't pay for the water and sewer.
You have electric in there for 624, what is that?
Common area,
Common area.
common area electric, hallways. So
But
questions?
this looks like a single-family home, oh no.
It's a 5-unit,
5 unit.
5-unit.
Now, the 5-unit is out of the Fannie Mae guidelines of 1 to 4.
You
So it's a
can't, you have to
commercial-
finance it through a commercial bank. We're gonna talk about that in a minute. But you can't finance it through a regular mortgage company. You gotta finance it through a commercial bank.
So that's more down and a slightly higher interest rate.
More, 25% down at a commercial lender versus 20. Okay? Questions? You're too easy. All right, so I want you to tell me, if you don't have any questions, how you get the price if you use a different cap rate. You got your calculator? Go get mine on my desk. Or you can do
Yes.
yours.
I can do the phone too.
All right, do it.
Let's do it.
How do you do that? I said interest rates are 6.5, Jens, so that means you gotta have a 7.5 cap rate. 1 point over the bank interest rate. Okay? What's the 7.5 cap price of that? I guess $1,006,000 and change.
1,617,000.
Just by chance. So, $1,006,000 makes it a good investment. At $1,008,000, I wouldn't buy it, even though it's a listing in-house. I wouldn't buy it at $1,008,000. At $1,006,000, I'd seriously think about it. If I could buy it for any less, I'd probably buy it as an investment. So, let me say again, cash on cash. At $1,006,000, this throws off 7.5% or $30,000 on your $400,000 down payment. Make sense? So $30,000 is 7.5%. You would get an equivalent on a 30-year loan. You're gonna get about 3% principal pay down in the first year. So that's another $30,000 on $1 million loan, $1,002,000 loan, okay? And if you get 7% appreciation, will you get 7% appreciation? This is not a residential house. It's an investment property. So how much appreciation you're gonna get is covered by how much you can raise the rent. So if you raise the rent 7% next year, you'll get 7% appreciation. If you raise the rent 10%, you'll get 10% appreciation. If you raise the rent 2%, you'll get 2% appreciation. So just remember that formula in the process, because that tells you whether you should buy an investment property or not. And then you have the tax benefits for gain, the tax gain or loss, and in this case, we've got 121,000 in net operating income. And so how long can I depreciate this building over? Does anybody know? 39,
Oh, that's, oh, yeah.
39
Where'd
So-
that come from, the 39? That's just,
from the IRS.
wasn't a calculation?
So if it's deemed a residential property, you can depreciate it over 27 and a half years. So let's say you could write it off over 27 and a half years. So you take the cost of the land or the value of the land. You paid $1.6 million for it. The value of the land's probably $100,000. So that leaves $1.5 million divided, Dimitri, by 27. What do I get?
Give me a second here. What was the math again?
Got to keep you on your toes. $1.5 million
Yeah,
by 27, for argument's sake.
55,000.
Oh, so I can deduct 55,000 from my taxes. What else can I deduct? My real estate taxes, another 9,000. So now I'm at 60,000. I can deduct my property insurance, 5502. So I don't quite, I can deduct water and sewer. I can deduct the landscaping. So I can deduct all of those things. So I'm now up to 71,000 of the 121 that I don't have to pay taxes on. But I do have to pay taxes on the other 50. So if I'm in the 40% tax bracket, that means I've got to pay 20,000 in taxes. So I've got to deduct that from my cash on cash, my principal pay down, my appreciation. Make sense? And that gives me the bottom line number. Now, I shared with everybody at our last meeting, and for those of you that weren't here, I'll share it again. A really quick and dirty way to look at an investment property anywhere and tell in 3 minutes or less whether you should spend any time on it. And here's the formula. Gross rents times 0.95. That's our 5% vacancy factor. And that's what's done here. And then deduct 20% of the rest of the income, which is a little more than we actually have to deduct on this property, but I'm dealing with a rule of thumb, 20%, and then calculate the cap rate. And that'll tell me what the property's worth. And on this property, it would tell me it's worth $1.6 million, not $1.8 million. Because when we listed it, interest rates were 3/4 of a point lower than they are now. So I'm about to reduce the price to $1.6 million. Make sense? Because I can't ask anybody to pay for it if it won't cash flow. So I look for one number for total return, and my target for a long time, longer than most of you are old, is 20% total return. So if I add cash on cash, principal pay down, appreciation, and tax gain or loss, I really want to try and get to 20%. So that makes it worthwhile investing in real estate for me and worrying about the tenant issues and plumbing leaks and roof leaks and ice dams and all the things that come with owning real estate. Does that make sense? Because if I put it in T-bills today, I can get 4%. So if I can get 5 times my T-bill rate, it's pretty interesting. And all of you ought to be all of you here tonight should be investing in real estate. Many of you already have. For 2 reasons. 85% of homeowners make 85% more money than renters. Interesting statistic. Zillow just published that. Second statistic is that if you can make 20% instead of 4%, it makes sense. At least to me. I'm not very good at math, but that seems to make sense. Questions or thoughts before we tackle the next structure? The formula I've just given you, nobody in the commercial real estate business knows or have ever heard of it.
How do you get that 20% quickly?
It's really simple because I take the gross rents times 0.95 and I've got the net rents, okay? Most properties, and then I deduct the property taxes, okay, which I forgot to tell you.
Is that from the 20%?
And then, no, that's beyond the 20%. Most apartment projects that are really new and really well run have a 30% expense factor. 2s, 3s, 4s, and 5s have a little less. Taxes are generally 4 or 5%. So if you take 20% more, you're close. And what I've given you is designed for you to be close. Doesn't have to be exact because close tells you whether you should go drive by the property or not, whether you should do the real numbers on the property, whether you should call the broker and have him get you the real numbers, whether you should take time and energy to think about it. Because whether most of you understand it or not, time's all you got. And I will share one interesting stat with you. 2 of the leading 4 doctors at Harvard told me a week ago, Bob, I'm 87. So if you can live for 5 more years, you'll live 25 more. And that has all to do with AGI and what the medical profession can figure out now they couldn't figure out before. So in one sense, I'm not sure I want to live another 25, maybe not even make 5, who knows? But the bottom line is that in reality, think about our American working force living to be 100 or 120, what that does to the whole world. It turns it totally upside down. And then you think about the millions of jobs that are going to be lost to AI, that are people are just standing on street corners with nothing to do and no job, and they're living for an extra 20 years. It's pretty frightening, in case you haven't thought about it. And everybody hasn't, because you didn't even know what the hell AGI was, along with 215 others. So thoughts?
So what happens then? When more than half the population is not working?
Well, don't you know what Newcomb is proposing in California?
Guaranteed minimum wage?
Guaranteed annual income, $36,000 a year for every standing citizen and illegal citizen in California. Can they afford it? Of course not. Who worries about that?
Well, the Fed can print money, but the states can't.
No, but they can float bond issues for 5 years while he's running for president.
But who can live off of that amount? They're still gonna be standing on that means our rents have to go down, or like who's
Oh
gonna
no,
pay
your
the
rents,
rents?
trust me, I've been around a long time, 87 years. I've never seen rents go down, they only go up.
Right, but who's gonna be able to afford them?
So
Gonna be a lot of tiny
don't
houses
be
up there.
a renter is the
Right,
message.
no, I'm not, but I want my properties rented.
I understand, but that's the dilemma we're gonna face.
Mm.
How many houses short do you think we are in America today? Anybody got a guess?
A lot. I don't know the number, but I know.
6 million. So that's why everybody's talking about affordability, because we can't afford to build them. Where do you live?
Salem, New Hampshire.
I'm in North Reading,
Okay.
which is,
Well, the bottom line is, there's no place to build in North Reading, there's no place to build in Andover. And if you do build, it's 2 million to 5 million for any decent sized house, meaning 4,000 feet or more. $500 a foot. Okay?
The MBTA circuit, where the governor was insisting that people build more affordable houses.
Yeah,
I couldn't believe, like in Marlboro, they said, no, we can't do this. And then once they were up against the wall with the court cases, they came up with 5 or 6 actual sites for the minimum housing units that you wanted.
well, and most
So
of
when
it,
push comes to shove,
it's there,
and the relaxation of certain zoning codes, then you've got the space.
no question, but the reality is most of the towns, not all, but most, out of the 276 towns in Massachusetts, the Builders Association believes 210 of the 276 homes under the MBTA law came up with places that weren't buildable. And I saw it all over here, North Andover, Andover, I mean, Salem, they all came up with places you can't, that qualify, but are not buildable. The guy who's the town planner here in Andover is a really good guy. And he tried to get the selectmen to select 4 places that were buildable. They selected 1 of the 4 and put in 6 others that weren't buildable. So, make sense? No. But I don't think as a whole, and maybe this will be an outrageous statement to some of you, I've known 5 presidents of the United States and met them and talked to them. I've known probably 100 US senators and representatives. And 40 years ago, they took their job half seriously. Today, none of them take it seriously, almost to the T. I know 1 US senator that I trust and believe in, and I helped him get elected from Ohio. And you know him.
Yep.
Bernie Marino, who's a friend of ours and a client of the firm. And he came to the US from Colombia, so he could never be president, but he'd make a hell of a president. And it cost us $550 million to get him elected US Senator from Ohio. So you think that's not serious money? $550 million it cost us to get him elected. And luckily we did get him elected. So, interesting number. So, we've got 5 minutes to go. So let's talk about one other thing here. And that's a look at financing. So, I'm working on a property here in Andover. And it's a 7-unit commercial building located a block from here. And the guy wants to buy it to move in his dry cleaning and laundry business. So tell me, he takes in $350,000 a year in the dry cleaning business.
Is
And
that
he-
on-site dry cleaning?
And he nets 100 in one site, okay? So how would I finance the purchase of $1,200,000 building for him. Anybody have any ideas? That's why we're having this class. Okay, so there's 4 kinds of financing that might be available. One is an SBA 504 loan. That requires him to use 51% of the building for himself. So this building is 2 floors and a basement. So if he uses the first floor and the basement, he can keep the tenants on the second floor, which will help him with cash flow, okay? He's currently paying $6,800 a month in rent, all in. So I have to come up with a financing program that would let him do the same. So today, I called the owner and said to him, "You like this guy as a buyer?" "Yeah, I like him a lot. I'm one of his biggest customers." I said, "You bought the building for $500,000 3 years ago. He can pay you $1.2 million for the building and come up with $200,000 down. Would you be willing to take a land contract for $1 million for 5 or 10 years at 5%? Because that'll make his monthly payments $5,300, and you add his taxes, that'll get him to $6,300, which is less than his $6,800 that he's currently paying. So he could afford to move in and redo the first floor of the building for dry cleaners and laundry. And you like the guy and you trust him." Yep. So I said, "I want you to think about it overnight." So what do you think he came back to me with? Herney, you help me think this through. What do you think he came back to me with as his only concern for doing that?
Well, usually if you're negotiating, you want more and you want a shorter term.
Yeah. That wasn't his concern. You're right, but that wasn't his concern.
Okay, I'd be interested in making sure that it was, well, you know, it's a viable business.
He knows it's a viable
Right.
business.
Mhm.
It's been here 29 years in the same location.
Okay, so more than.
Bill.
Oh, wait a minute, maybe cross-collateralize it?
Equity?
It's a good thought, but that's not
I
it.
was gonna say life insurance.
Well, that wasn't it either. But let's keep going because it's really relevant to all of you to think through these kinds of issues. Because the next thing I did was I called my local banker and said, "This is the building, this is the facility. Would you finance it?" "Yes," with 25% down, 30-year amortization, and a 6.5% rate for $1 million on $1.2 million purchase. Building's listed for $1.3 million something. I want you to scratch your heads because it's really important. What else? What issue would he raise, Alan?
Environmental concerns?
Oh, he said, I could finance it. He doesn't need the money. But he said, "I'm not sure that I want a dry cleaners in there if something happens to him."
That's why I asked, is it dry cleaning on site? Which is tough to get. Okay.
So, valid point. So I said, think about overnight how much you like him and whether you want to finance it or not. And I said, maybe the solution is we do a 2-year or a 3-year land contract, hoping that rates will go down from 6.5% in the interim, so he can get in the 5s, which will help him a lot. And the bank will be just as happy at 5.5 as they are 6.5. So our business in the real estate brokerage business has, in the 1990s, we used to get a yellow book then from the MLS. It was this thick, that had all weekly, that had all the new listings in it. And our job was to provide information as real estate agents. In the 2000s, when the internet arrived, our business from 2000 to 2020 was to help interpret the information that buyers and sellers had, because there was so damn much information they couldn't figure it out. Now our issue is we're total problem solvers, because as the internet's got faster and more available information, you all right? Okay. Our job's just to solve problems and help people get to a closing or buy a property. And that's what, at the outset, when I told you 85% of buyers and sellers think we're problem solvers, and we really are.
Well, when you were doing like the Walgreens leases,
Yeah.
like purchasing the property and renting it, you came up with exhaustive traffic studies.
We do,
of
we
the
do,
customer base.
we do the traffic studies. We do,
On this,
we-
on this dry cleaning business,
no.
like his current location versus the new one.
Well, it's a block apart.
Okay.
So, on the same street. So it's a non-event, okay, in my opinion. And the seller and I talk, the seller's a very savvy, sophisticated owner, smart enough that he paid the prior owner $550,000 for something. In 3 years, he's gonna sell for $1.2 million. So he doesn't need much help.
Mhm.
He has 4 properties outside of Rye, New Hampshire. 4 houses. You sitting down? The annual rent on the 4 houses is $2 million. The annual rent on the 4 houses is $2 million. So he understands, and he's got 4 houses in Andover that he rents at $10,000 to $20,000 a month. So he's fairly sophisticated. He doesn't need much help. But the point is that so the answer to your question is, on the Walgreens, I would do concentric circles, I'd do traffic patterns, and I'd do average incomes. And I once thought in my lifetime, Mike, I would never see a Walgreens close. They're gonna close 5,000 of them this year. Because the healthcare industry's totally changed.
The point of your problem solving,
Yeah,
the last house I bought, I made a deal with the sellers. And I said, okay, I can close like by the end, Wednesday, I can close by Saturday. And he said, okay, that's good. And he said, well, we can be out of here in a couple of months. And how fast do you think I get them out of there?
a year.
By the time we closed, I took him around to look at apartments, and
Yeah.
being a landlord myself, I can read what the leasing agent is talking about and make a deal.
Yep.
And it happened. And well, all my stuff, I won't need all this. I said, well, here's 3 stickers, red, yellow, and green. Okay? Red is you don't want to see it again. Yellow, you'll put it in storage. Green, it's going with you.
Yep.
And then I get someone with a truck, and then bang.
Moved him.
It happened. Yeah.
Yep.
And I have friends that said, well, I wouldn't do that, They have to take their own stuff. They have to find their own apartments.
That's
And I said,
that's why you don't own many properties.
right. Mhm.
So, for all of you, I would like you to fill in Nick's form so that you can be advised before the next meeting, and so that you're on his list if you haven't been. So 2 rules.
Thanks.
I always start exactly at 6, and I always end exactly at 7, so you can plan your life around it. And we're glad you came. And truly, we're gonna have 9 more of these this year. And at the end of the 9, if you take notes and listen, you'll be better educated than 90% of the commercial real estate agents in America.
This is
And,
getting legs.
yeah, yeah. Well, Nick's doing a good job, and Nick will be happy to work with you if you're interested in looking for investment properties, and I'll oversee them. Questions before we disband?
Well, you said at the beginning, regarding the agents, trustworthy, knowledge, and that was an R word. What was the R?
Responsive.
Response.
Trustworthy, responsive, and knowledgeable. 78%. Zillow just did a big study. It's this thick, and the stats I gave you came out of the Zillow study. Zillow gets 29 million hits a month on their website. 29 million hits a month. Yes.
Before I came here, I read something, I'm not sure if it was in the Globe or Boston Magazine, and it was talking about, does Massachusetts have a wrecking ball coming for it? And it was talking about how, with the amount of jobs and companies that are leaving for different states, the companies that are coming here internationally, whether it's from Germany, that would typically choose Boston or picking Providence and New Hampshire and whatnot. And, you know, the healthcare system, 16 out of the 24 systems are running
Negative.
red.
Yep.
So what do you see as the future for
Of
Massachusetts?
Massachusetts.
And
Well, I moved here from Michigan 20 years ago. And the environment in the 2 states is like black and white. And Michigan is not as good as it once was. I mean, Michigan has the automotive industry and has a lot of other major businesses and industries headquartered there. But it's not as good as it once was because we've had 3 governors in a row that were clueless. In the early 90s and early 2000s, we had 3 governors in a row who were very bright and got it. Charlie Baker, in my opinion, was very bright. Personal friend of mine, so I'm biased. But Charlie Baker had an 86% approval rating with the voters of Massachusetts and fought the millionaire's taxes with all of his might and being. Healy gets the millionaire's tax put in, and that means that anybody who sells a home for more than $1 million or makes more than $1 million in a year gets to send 4% of all that to Boston for the state of Massachusetts. And that's caused a mass evacuation. And there was an article, maybe in Sunday's Globe, by somebody who talked about what's happening in that regard. Same thing's happening in New York. With Mondani in New York, he just decided that his budget was $5 billion out of whack for New York City, and he tapped the rainy day fund that hadn't been tapped for 100 years. And the controller says, no, you're not going to tap it. And so what's he going to do? Raise taxes another 5%, and sales taxes are 13, okay? And taxes on income are 9. I mean, it goes back to I ran a cattle operation in North Salem, New York in '62, and my boss's taxes were 92% between state, city, and local taxes in New York. 92%. So we had every tax shelter device known to mankind that we employed. Okay? But it's interesting. I'll share a story, true story with you. I have a really close friend in New York who left New York 3 years ago. And he's the largest diamond dealer in the world. And his son's the largest wholesale diamond dealer in the world. So they're fairly affluent. He said to me 3 years ago, Bob, 14 of us had a meeting at the Harvard Club in New York and decided we've had enough of terrible mayors. We've had enough of rising taxes. We're all going to liquidate all of our New York real estate and move to Florida. So next time I saw him, I said, I've been thinking about it. How much real estate do you guys have? He said, we total it all up, it's about $9 billion worth of real estate, with a B. And I was just with him in Palm Beach in the end of February. All of them have sold all of their real estate holdings in New York, and they all live in Palm Beach. Okay? And it was mind-boggling. I met 3 or 4 of his friends, and they all just left New York. So when they leave, jobs leave, but more important, smarts leave. And when smarts start leaving, it's the beginning of the end.
All that revenue left too, and all those
Of course,
taxes.
of
gone.
course.
Yeah.
All the, I don't know, it was billions.
He could have did a deal with the mayor.
No, he couldn't do it with the mayor. He tried. He tried. So I'll share one other story that I found fun. Is I watched the Super Bowl with the president at the next table to me. So that was kind of interesting.
I bet it was.
And on the table on the other side, I had Giuliani, and I had Lindell, the guy, the pillow guy. Okay.
He's still
Where
around.
would we go?
I haven't heard him in a while.
And I had what the hell was the guy from South Carolina, the senator? What's his name?
How about cars for kids?
Yeah.
No, from there.
But it was interesting. I mean, the president spent watched the whole game, and
It was a terrible game.
well, it was because we're Patriots fans. That's why.
It was awful. I think they missed the bus to the game. Some other people showed
They
up.
didn't get there.
Yeah.
Any other questions, guys, before we break up?
So, the story with all these people at the Super Bowl game, what's the message there? They're all leaving red states, or they're selling their properties, or
No, they're not leaving red states. They're all going to red states from blue states.
okay.
I mean, and it's mass migration.
I mean, that's a lot of horsepower, a lot of intellectual.
Well, and the intellectual part's the part we miss the most.
Okay.
I mean, people don't think about that. But it's happening here. It's going on right now. People are going to New Hampshire. Why pay state sales tax? Why pay state income tax? The problem is if you go to New Hampshire and you earn the money in Massachusetts, you still got to pay the taxes.
Right.
At the rent control hearing that I attended, and if you want to hate yourself, go to a state legislators meeting. And some of the people, against rent control were saying, hey, they live in the Merrimack Valley, there's brokers there. And they said, builders are looking up in New Hampshire, they're licking their chops, because if rent control comes into Massachusetts, which it's probably gonna be on the agenda,
On the ballot.
right, and it's for every city and town, all
Yep.
351 in Mass.
Yeah,
If that happens, these builders will relax their operations here and go right up to New Hampshire.
no question.
And for my group, when I have the judges, especially the heads of the housing courts, speak at one of my meetings, I try to do that up in New Hampshire, so that members, would know the adjudication of justice and
Yeah.
the disposition of the case. And I was blown away by the housing court sessions in New Hampshire. Down here, if you're unfortunate enough to go with one of your tenants to the housing court, it's like, okay, Mr. Bowman, you provided this lease and all the correct paperwork, and it was signed by you and signed by the tenant? Yes, sir. Mr. Tenant, did you read all this? Oh, yes, you did. Did you sign this? Yes. Do you know what it meant? Okay, give him 6 more months.
Yep.
Up in New Hampshire, they don't even ask that. They say, are you paying the rent? No? Okay, not even why, not even how much. It's like, you're not paying? Okay, pack your stuff, you're gone.
Yep, well, Michigan's 3 days. When we go to court, they're evicted in 3 days if they haven't paid the rent. Simple.
Now with rent control, you know,
Whole different issue.
it'll be even worse. You can only, and the law that they want to pass says whatever the rent was in January 31st, 2026, you can't raise it more than 5%
Yeah.
per year.
Yep, no matter what you do to improvement. So you don't make any improvements. When I went to work for my first boss in New York, he owned 7,000 apartments in New York City, all under rent control. And they'd have a celebration every time somebody died, because they could raise the rent all they wanted to. And rents for Park Avenue and Central Park apartments in the 60s were $200 or $300 a month. Crazy.
Well, the mayor of Cambridge was in a rent control apartment, paying about $400 in
Yeah.
Harvard Square
Yep,
before it got repealed.
yep. Guys and gals, thanks for coming. Okay, it's nice to meet you.
Okay, thank you for
And
coming.
thanks for coming. Okay.
For having us.
Thank you. We'll see you next month, April 22nd.